وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا।
और कह दे हक आ गया और बातिल भाग गया, यकीनन बातिल भाग जाने वाला ही है।
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Now today, as Sadr Sahib had just announced, I will be going through the prophecy of Hazrat Musleh Maud. Luckily, Hazur Anwar has given the whole khutbah, which is 1 hour khutbah, and he's gone through in detail why the prophecy was there, why Prophet Muhammad told us that God will give him his son, and what were his attributes and how the prophecy was fulfilled. Anyone who has, okay, put it this way, who has listened to the khutbah so far? Jazakallah. So obviously that helps my goal, so I don't have to go into that much detail about the prophecy. I would rather spend some time about objections which have been brought forward about the prophecy, and I will give you the true answer according to the writing of Prophet Messiah Islam. Before I start, anyone who goes to sleep, I will ask that person question, and anyone who is talking to each other or even wasting time, I will ask them a question. So all of you have to be attentive because it's a very important topic. Now, Prophet Islam, as you can see from my very first reference, and remember, whatever we say to public, whatever we tell public, it has to be on the basis of solid evidences. We can't say things just because we want to say. And about this prophecy, the person who told us that God has told us that prophecy is who? Prophet Messiah Islam. And if he has told us anything about the prophecy, his words have to be the last word. Nobody can claim that his words were wrong. Khuda na khasta. Nauzubillah. Okay? Now, Prophet Messiah Islam, in his book Hamamatul Bushra, he has mentioned this prophecy. Not only mentioned, he has claimed that this prophecy is one of the evidence that he is from God. He says that the third sign of the promised Messiah Islam is that Allah will bestow him with his son. So that prophecy of the Musleh Maud is actually one of the signs of the promised Messiah Islam. So it's such an important prophecy. And if somebody says that prophecy didn't fulfill, that Prophet Messiah Islam didn't actually get the physical son, actually that person is saying that Nauzubillah ma'adallah, Prophet Messiah Islam, this third sign was not fulfilled. Is that important? And Prophet Messiah Islam has clearly written there, I've highlighted it. He says, so therefore these are the signs of the promised Messiah Islam who Allah has told us. And all of these, he says, all of these signs by the grace of Allah I will be given. That's one important thing we have to remember. Then going to the prophecy itself, we have, this is the prophecy which was published on 1st of March 1886 in one of the Indian newspapers. It was not published in Jamaat literature because at that time in 1886, nobody knew about Prophet Islam that much. There was no establishment of Jamaat. Jamaat was established in when? 1889. So this was even before that. It was published in that newspaper, and I will quickly, it's a very long prophecy, about 7-8 pages. So I'm going to just go through 1 or 2 points in prophecy. First of all, Prophet Islam said that in this book, he's talking about this ishtihar, this announcement was about Brahim Ahmadiyya. And he says, in this book I will mention prophecies, and the first kind of prophecy will be about myself, about me. And in this category, he's mentioned three categories. And the prophecy of Musleh Maud, who promised Messiah is now mentioned in category 1. So the reason I'm saying that at this point, I'm bringing this point, is that if somebody says that this prophecy of Musleh Maud was not about the physical son of promised Messiah Islam, promised Messiah Islam's writing clearly tells us that that person is lying. When we go into the prophecy, I'm not going to obviously go into that much detail because Hazur has already mentioned most of it. If we go to the, and again, look, Hazur said that the first prophecy, which he is going to start from here, he said, "Jo khud is akhkar se mutalik hai." The first prophecy is about myself, about me, about obviously when he explained in this prophecy that Allah has told me that He will bestow me with a special son. Then prophecies start from here. From Aya ke main tujhe rahmat ka nishan deta hu, and Hazur has read that prophecy, and Zaim Sahib has read that prophecy. So I'm going to quickly go through the important points. An important point is, Promised Messiah Islam told us that this prophecy is going to be a sign for non-believers. It's going to be a sign for those people who don't believe in Allah. It will be a sign for those people who don't believe in the Holy Quran. It will be a sign for those people who don't believe in Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the reason was that at that was the time, remember it was 1886. Promised Messiah Islam at that time was emerging as a Muslim scholar. And all those people, Hindus, Christians, you name it, they were against him. And at that time, Promised Messiah Islam, when he claimed that Islam is a living religion, the Holy Quran is a living book, and Islam's God is a living God, he still talks to people. People, they laughed at him, and especially other religions. They didn't accept that, because that puts their religion obviously down, because most of the religions, they don't believe in that anymore. Promised Messiah Islam at that time, when he claimed that God still talks, they asked him, okay, if God spoke to you, give us a sign. And at that time, Promised Messiah Islam, he went to Hoshiarpur. Hoshiarpur is a city in India, and he prayed to Allah for 40 days. And during that time, this prophecy was given to him. And that's the reason he's saying there that this prophecy is about non-believers. And the reason I'm bringing this point is because nowadays I hear from, I will mention to you later on, that there is a person who claims that this prophecy was a test for Jamaat Ahmadiyya Muslimah itself. Wrong. Promised Messiah Islam has clearly written that this prophecy is about non-believers, non-Muslims. The sign will be given to Promised Messiah Islam so that he can prove to non-believers that there is a God there, not to Ahmadis. Okay, now I will come back to this point here, but I think for the prophecy I will just finish there, because there are more points, but I can see that 15 minutes are already nearly gone. Another thing which we have to remember about the prophecy is that Promised Messiah Islam was declared as Hakmu Adl by the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, does anyone know what is Hakmu Adl? What is Hakmu Adl? Okay, now that's one meaning, but actually Hakmu Adl mean, Hakam mean the person whose words will be final. And the reason the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that, because he knew there will be many sects in Islam and everyone will be saying, I'm right and you're wrong. And that time, the person will come who will tell my ummah what is right and what is wrong. And when he said he will be Haq Mu'adal, what he meant was his words will be last words. And I'm showing you the words of Haq Mu'adal about this prophecy. And I'm reading from Majmu' Ishtiharat, page 142. And Prophet Musa says very clearly that whenever Allah reveals an ilham, whenever something is revealed to a person, only that person knows the true meaning of that revelation. No one else on earth can say that, that ilham, that revelation from God, I know the meaning better than you. And he very clearly says that. He said the reason is because the person who has been given that ilham, he knows exactly which way God has informed him and God has given him that ilham. The reason I'm saying to you is because nowadays there is a fitna which claims that as God forbid that person knows more, better meaning of ilham of Prophet Musa as compared to the Prophet Musa, which is wrong. Prophet Musa has clearly told us only the person who is mulham, he knows the true meaning of ilham, whatever has been revealed to him. Now, another very important issue, but before I go to that, I just want to show you Prophet Musa, obviously he told us that prophecy. He not only told us that God has given me that prophecy that he will give a son, it was one of those prophecies which was fulfilled during his lifetime. And he clearly told us that this prophecy has been fulfilled. And I'm going to show you only one reference about that. And we got too many, I would say about 5-6 references which are from Prophet Musa, even more than that, which clearly says that that prophecy has been fulfilled. I'm just going to show you one or two. This is Tariqul Qulub, volume 15, page 154. And Prophet Musa in that book, he says that ilham, that revelation, told me that Allah will bless me with 4 sons. And then he says, and among those 4 sons, there will be one son who will have that special characteristics, who will be, he used the word, ek marde khuda masih se ilham ne bayan kiya. And if we go back to the prophecy of Musleh Maud, one of the attributes of Musleh Maud is that he will be Masih Sith. So Prophet Musa has very clearly, black and white, told us that the revelation told me that there will be 4 sons, and amongst those 4 sons, there will be one who will have special characteristics. Then, he's using there a future tense. And look there, what he says there. He says, so, Khuda Ta'ala ke fadl se 4 ladke paida ho gaye. He said, and look, Allah has given me 4 sons. Allah has given me those 4 sons. And what it means? If so, 4 sons have been given to the person who claimed that Allah will give me 4 sons, amongst those 4 sons, there is one son who is that special son which Allah was telling him about. No one else. Physical son, it has to be, the Muslim has to be from a physical son of Prophet Musa. No one claimed that, he actually didn't understand Prophet Musa, and I know that it was not physical son. He's telling us that God told me 4 sons, and one of them will be Musleh Maud. So it's a very, very important reference. I will show you again. It's volume 15, page 154. Okay, and just out of, just one of those reference, which I'm telling that, the person I'm talking about, I have mentioned this reference so many times in my videos. No answer so far, alhamdulillah. No answer. Except that he says the Prophet Musa Haq Mu'adal Prophet Musa Naudullah, he couldn't understand his ilham. which I told you, the reference one, before I showed you, Promised Messiah Islam has told us only mulham knows the best meaning of ilham. So obviously, according to Promised Messiah Islam, prophecy has been fulfilled, and it's very easy for us to understand. Allah gave him 4 sons, and look what, out of 4 sons, only 1 son was given he became Khalifa. Only 1 son was given all these attributes. He was Khalifa for 52 years. And attributes to that special person in that prophecy were 52 attributes. Okay? So, once I showed this, alhamdulillah, that prophecy was fulfilled, I'm going to quickly show you 1 or 2 excuses, the lame excuses which have been in the past been put forward by that person. And many of us know there's a person in Germany, his name is Abdul Ghaffar Jamba. He claimed to be that he is that Musleh Maud. And alhamdulillah, he has been given answers. We have given him all these answers. And that's the reason, and because he's not from God, so far I think I have made about 40 videos about him. And I was thinking the other day that I think I have made more videos than the number of people who actually follow him. That's what I think. I don't think he's been followed by many people. So anyway, going back to his excuses, one of his excuses, because he knows that he can't be Musleh Maud, he says actually the prophecy I just showed you before, it was not actually about Musleh Maud, it was about Zaki Ghulam. And Promised Messiah Islam misunderstood it. Now, and then obviously he twists words and brings his own things, but I will just show you exactly what Promised Messiah Islam has told us. Going back to the prophecy of Promised Messiah Islam, you see here I have highlighted green and then I've highlighted here yellow. There's a reason for that. Promised Messiah Islam has told us that actually in the very beginning when Allah revealed him that prophecy, he thought that Allah is talking about 1 son in this prophecy. But what actually happened was, the son was born, which is Hazrat Bashir Akbar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, but after some time he passed away. And that time, obviously, people obviously they started, especially non-believers, non-Muslims, Hindus, Christians, they started making, the way they obviously do in this situation, certain, excuses. He accused him that he was lying in this and that. And that time, Promised Messiah Islam told us, and I personally believe that thing happened because Allah knew 100 years after this prophecy that certain fitna will come. And Promised Messiah Islam, when his son passed away, he wrote in his book, in his Sabr Ishtihar, we call it Green Ishtihar. I can show you that if you want, but anyway, he's written in that Ishtihar that Allah has revealed to me that actually these few paragraphs, they are actually not for 1 son, they are actually for 2 sons. And he says the wording before uske saath fadl hai is about first son, and after this uske saath fadl hai is about the second son, which is Musleh Maud. Now the reason I'm showing you now is about I'm trying to make point is about Zaki Ghulam. This person who claims to be Zaki Ghulam, Promised Messiah Islam told us that this part of the prophecy, which I highlighted green, is about his first son. And look, word Zaki Ghulam is in those few sentences. Zaki Ghulam. And according to Promised Messiah Islam, who was Zaki Ghulam? Hazrat Bashir Awwal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, his first child, who passed away after a few months. So Zaki Ghulam, according to Promised Messiah Islam, was given to him and he died, he passed away. So nobody now can claim that he is that Zaki Ghulam mentioned in this prophecy. Remember, Zaki mean Pak, pious. Ghulam mean son. And that's another, the reason I'm telling you is I want to bring another point. This person, Jamba Sahib, he sometimes bring this allegation that Prophet Muhammad he's misunderstood the prophecy, and that's the reason he wrote this word ladka, son, himself. This is not from God. And when you read this prophecy, yes, Prophet Muhammad did write that word from himself. And the reason is very obvious. Zaki Ghulam is not an Urdu word. It's an Arabic word. And Prophet Muhammad, obviously people around him, they were mostly Urdu speaking. He wrote that word to explain that Allah is telling me about a son. And if you look before that, just before that, if we read, it says, I'll give you glad tidings about a son, a ladka. Then he says, Ek Zaki Ghulam tujhe milega. Then after that it says, wo ladka tumhara mehman aata hai. So look, he says, Sunday, and then there is another son here. Anyway, there is a son here, but obviously this, I don't know, somehow this Ijtihad, they have missed one phrase, which actually in Tazkar is there. But anyway, Allah again and again was telling Prophet Muhammad, son, and he mentioned himself Sunday. So the person who claims now that Prophet Muhammad made mistake and this and that, that's just an excuse. Zaki Ghulam has come and he's and he's passed away, so nobody can claim now that he is that Zaki Ghulam. Another excuse which he sometimes brings is the Prophet Muhammad, he made, we call it Ijtihadi Ghalti. He made a mistake. Now Prophet Muhammad, remember Prophet Muhammad himself has told us, this is the reference I was showing you from volume 15, and look on the very next page, he says that yes, even the Ijtihadi Ghalti, the mistake, even the prophets and Rasul, they can make Ijtihadi mistake, जिस पर वो कायम नहीं रखे जाते, but God always tells them that they are on mistake, they have made that mistake. What he means is that even if a prophet, a Nabi, a Mulham makes a mistake about a prophecy, God tells him, God informs him during his lifetime. That's what it means. In Urdu, when you say, this or wo kaam nahi rakhe jate, that means Allah informed them and then they change. They tell the people, obviously, this has happened. Now, the reason I'm showing you is, when people, well, especially those Jambas, they say that Prophet Muhammad made a mistake, the sign of a prophet, that he is a true prophet of God, is that Allah, even if prophet makes a mistake, Allah informs him during his lifetime. So, if anyone claims now that Prophet Muhammad unfortunately made a mistake, God forbid, then Allah had to inform him. And even Jamba Sahib, he says nearly every his khutbah that his phrase is that Mulham sari umar apne ladkon mein usko dhoondta raha. Mulham, all his life he was looking for a Muslim out where in his physical son. Okay, so according to this Prophet Muhammad's writing, that Jamba Sahib is wrong, and Alhamdulillah we are right that the Muslim out was actually Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib. Then I just want to show you two quick references. I'll just tell you verbally. There's one excuse which he makes is the Prophet Muhammad in one of his book, Mazahib al-Rahman, he says that Allah will bestow me with a fifth son. And he always says, show me the fifth son. And the reason he says it is because as if Prophet Muhammad knows, if he can make mistake here, he can make in this prophecy about fifth son, he can make mistake about the Muslim out. I will just give you the answer. Prophet Muhammad himself in the book Haqiqat al-Wahi, I got the reference, he's mentioned the same prophecy. that Bashirni bi khamisin, that God has told me that He will give me fifth son. And he says that prophecy Allah has given me is actually about my grandson. The person who Allah told that prophecy himself has told us in his lifetime that the ilham wa bashirni bi khamisin was not about his physical son, but actually it was about his physical grandson. Okay, so remember that, because in Arabic, ghulam, ladka, it's used for both son and grandson. Now, very last point. One of the Jamba Sahib sometimes says that, like the Prophet Islam, he proved that Isa Islam is died, and Prophet Islam used 30 verses from the Holy Quran. He says that I got 13 mubashshir ilhamat of Prophet Islam, and those 13 ilhamat proves that Musleh Maud was not actually his physical son. The reason he claims that, he says that those ilhamat actually were revealed to Prophet Islam up to October 1907. And he says, the thing is that the son has to born after those revelations were finished. It was October 1907. What he hides from public is that Prophet Islam himself, he has published in his books that all those ilhamats, most of them were about his physical sons, and the rest of them were about his progeny. And he has clearly mentioned that this is about my grandson, this is about my somebody in my, in my progeny will be, that's the prophecy about him. That's one point. Second point is there are few ilhamats which Prophet Islam himself told us that this ilham is about my dad's son and that ilham is about that son. But Jamba Sahib, I would say fraudster, he claims that Nauzubillah, Prophet Islam was wrong when he said that this ilham was about my son. Actually, this ilham was about Jamba Sahib. Okay, I will just give you two examples. Right, that's the writing that's one of the article of Jamba Sahib, where he has mentioned all these 13 ilhamats. Before I start that, Jamba Sahib in his speech in 9th of February, he said that these ilhamat, we should just believe them as they are, and nobody should be given nobody should do any explanation about them. Nobody is allowed to do any explanation. And he said because these are word of God. And look that the person who tells us that nobody should be given any explanation about these ilhamat, these red wording is Jamba Sahib wording. He himself writes the ilhamat and then tries to explain in his own words what he thinks what it really means. So obviously, if nobody is allowed to do any explanation, then Jamba Sahib is not allowed to do it. But having said that, Prophet Islam, who was actually the person who was given the revelation, he has every right to tell us that what he really means by this ilham. And he tells us very clearly, look, this ilham was 1881, and he says, Tazkara page 29. Okay? Now, if you go to Tazkara page 29, which is page 4 on this one. That's page 29. Okay? Now, this is that ilham, Inna nubashiruka bi ghulamin haseen. And guess what? Prophet Islam has written very clearly. He said, Allah told me that they gave me this ilham many years ago, and at that time I was not even married. After that ilham, he said, I got married in Delhi, and Allah gave me that son, which is Allah gave him glad tidings in this ilham. Allah gave me that son, and He then gave me 3 afterwards. So Prophet Islam, himself has informed us that this ilham was about his son. Which son? Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib. But, as I said, Jamba Sahib is hiding that fact that Prophet ﷺ has clearly told us. Now, I will just give you one more example and then I will finish. If I go to page 5, then is, because I'm just giving you two examples because these are very clear examples. If I go to Ilham number 3, Inna Nubashiruka bi Ghulamin. Now this note says in Warul Islam, Safa page 39, and this, and he's given, Jamba Sahib has written his own explanation about it. But if we go to Promised Messiah Islam, what he told us about that ilham, and that is page 12 on that. Now, that's ilham number 3, Inna Nubashiruka bi Ghulamin, and Promised Messiah Islam told us that this ilham was about Hazrat Mirza Sharif Ahmad radiyallahu anhu. So he told us himself that this ilham was about his so-and-so son. And now, unfortunately, Jamba Sahib, he just collected all those ilhamat and he says, Promised Messiah was wrong. I know Allah meant that these ilham was about me. And funny enough, I will finish my, this... we
have got time, but
we got time, okay. Now, I just want to give them time to ask any questions. Funny enough, person who claims that he knows more than Prophet ﷺ, when we ask him, okay, you know more than Prophet ﷺ, so where are your ilhamat, where are your revelations? Give us words. Which word exactly God has given you glad tidings that you are Muslim? And guess what? There is not a single word. Somewhere along the line he says that God, the reason, he says, Dr. Yai asked me again and again that show me your ilham, but how can I show him my ilham? Because most of my revelation, he says, is wahi ghair matlaw. Wahi ghair matlaw is that wahi when Allah doesn't tell you exact words. Okay? And that way, he actually tried to convince public that the reason I can't show you my ilham is because God does talk to me, but He talks to me with the wahi ghair matlaw. He doesn't talk to me with exact words. But what he's forgotten is, Promised Messiah Islam has told us, he says that wahi ghair matlaw is that wahi which is most probably from Satan. Okay, so that's another important point. Because Allah, when talks to the man of God, He talks to him very clearly. And Prophet ﷺ and prophets of Allah, they have told us exact words when Allah speaks to them. Okay? But in contrast, this person who claims to be Muslim out, he has no revelation from God. Okay? Which also proves that he is not from Allah. Any questions?
How many people exactly follow the Bible?
I do not know exactly, but I'm sure it's in tens, 10, 20, 30, something like that. Yes?
You mentioned the mistake that his election was made and Hazur accepted it, or said that it was gone correctly. What was the nature of that?
Oh yeah, what happened was, Promised Messiah Islam, good question, because I wanted to bring that point, but then I thought if somebody asked me, then I will bring that point. Now, what happened if you read this prophecy from here, especially Urdu speaking, people, it looks like this is about one person. Okay, but when his son obviously passed away, imagine at that time, imagine how Promised Messiah Islam felt. He must have gone back to God that oh God, you told me that you're going to give me that special son, and what's happened? And then Allah revealed to him that actually this prophecy is in two parts. This is about first first child, and this is for second child. And when I read this prophecy last week, actually, to be honest with you, even this point, I knew Prophet ﷺ has said that this is for the first child and this is for the second child. But this phrase that says "Uske saath fazl hai jo uske aane ke saath aayega," I personally didn't understand how can something start from there. Uske saath fazl hai. What does it mean? Okay, and only last week when I was doing that live broadcast, it just occurred. Just Allah may sometimes just show you that what it really mean. If you read this in the context that the first child was born and he has passed away, and actually us means the first child. Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad A. Not Hazrat Mirza Bashir Awwal रज़ियल्लाहु ताला अन्हु के साथ फजल है जो हजरत मिर्जा बशीर अव्वल के आने के साथ आएगा. Immediately after him he will come. So that's what it really meant. Okay, and I'm not just I didn't understand that much, but Promised Messiah al-Islam himself has mentioned that. That's the Sabz-e-Ishtihar, which is very famous in Jamaat literature. And he says, one page before that, he says, और दूसरी रहमत की जो भी हमने बयान की है, which is Muslim out, उसकी तकमील के लिए खुदा ताला दूसरा बशीर भेजेगा. He will send second bashir. And then he says, Allah Ta'ala has revealed to me in that the 20th February 1886 prophecy was actually about two sons. Okay? And then he says, and the wording where he says, Mubarak ho jo asman se aata hai, that's about Bashir Awwal. And where he says, and says the sentence after that is about the second Bashir. Then, on very next page, he said, ये धोखा खाना नहीं चाहिए कि जिस पेशगोई का जिक्र हुआ वो मुस्लिम मौत के हक में है. He's talking about those, the green ones. He say, क्योंकि बज़रिया इल्हाम साफ तौर पर खुल गया है कि यही बातें पिसर मुतवफ़ी के हक में हैं. So those words were about, those phrases were about that son who has passed away. And he said, और मुस्लिम मौत के हक में जो पेशगोई है वो इस इबारत से शुरू होती है कि उसके साथ फजल है जो उसके आने के साथ आएगा. Now the point I'm trying to make here is, if we say us is Hazrat Mirza Bashir Awwal Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu, then you understand this sentence very clearly. Hazrat Mirza Bashir Awwal Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu के साथ फजल है जो Hazrat Mirza Bashir Awwal के आने के साथ आएगा, not himself. It will come after him. And that's the reason Prophet Islam has written there. और बशीर अव्वल जो फौत हो गया, बशीर सानी के लिए बतौर इरहास था. And irhas mean when the sign is about to, when something is about to appear, and we see that initial sign about that thing, that anything, that's called irhas in Arabic. Okay? Any other question?
Where can you see your channel?
Oh. He said, where you can see my channel. Does anybody know? There's a channel on YouTube, it's called Real Islam channel. That's my YouTube channel. And we also got Facebook channel where, can I mention to this one? On every Saturday, 3 o'clock UK time, we have live program where anyone is allowed to ask questions, obviously about religion. And we have, even yesterday we had program and there was a very scholar Maulvi, he was there, and Allah gave us, we managed to give him answers. And we have debate in a very scholarly fashion. We don't have like Maulvi, screaming and shouting on each other. Any other question? Because after that I have questions. How many minutes we got?
Yeah, about 10.
10. Right, any more questions? No? So it's my turn now.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
So, Dr. Saab, this about grandson. Have you actually mentioned it to Jambas about this, that the fifth son was actually
the
grandson?
thing is, yes,
Has he denied it?
Jamba Sahib has been answered by many Ahmadi scholars in the past. Even I didn't know before. It's only once I started investigating, then I find out that there are people like in Canada, in America, they have given all these answers to this person. So what he does is, because he's done exactly the same thing to me, when you give him answer, for example, I read his article, which I think I said, I read his article about, I think 13, whatever, this article, word to word, and I proved that this article against Prophet Messiah Islam wording. So what he does, and then in next book by next speech, he reads his previous article again. He says, I proved my point, that's it, that's his answers. More 9 out of 10 times, he just goes back, and to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure he knows that he has nothing to lose. Out of 30 people, how many can he lose? And most of them, they are those people who are either, they have something, they were other issues. And that's the reason Jamaat either got rid of them or they were unhappy about few things. But that's his answer. In Canada, one of our Ahmadi, Sayyid Kaleem Saab, he has written a book about and answered all his allegations, and that book is, anyone can guess? Can anyone guess how many pages that book?
200.
200. Any more? Up.
300.
Up.
500.
500. It's 1,035 pages book. And all of these things have been mentioned to Jamba Sahib, but then I spoke to that person. The Allah wale log. He has not written even his phone, nothing on that book. Somebody gave me, it's in PDF format. I managed to find him and I asked him, obviously and I wanted his permission to upload that book and with a video with it so that people can get benefit from it. So inshallah, next week, inshallah, I will upload his book. But point I'm trying to make is, many Ahmadis, he was one of them. I know many people in America they have answered. They've given him answer of all his allegations, excuses. But if somebody doesn't want to listen, what can you do? Any question?
So I'm getting slightly confused. I always thought that the son of Hazrat Sallallahu who was a guest, was Hazrat Mirza Mubarak.
Hazrat Masih Maud first son was, according to this prophecy, was Hazrat Mirza Bashir Awwal Radhiyallahu anhu. He passed away, and then Hazrat Mirza Mubarak must passed away afterwards.
So if you include Hazrat Mirza Mubarak, isn't there 5 sons?
Yes, but when the Prophet Islam, the reason he said 4 is because at one time there were only 4 sons alive together. So he didn't include Bashir Awwal Radhiyallahu anhu in that. Any question? Right. Okay. Jazakallah.